So I figured in this video I would show you some gameplay of The Last of Us multiplayer, since a lot of people asked to see this, and whilst doing so, in a second or two, I'd tell you what my thoughts on the ending of The Last of Us were, my sort of interpretation of what happened, whether or not Joel made the right decision, because I know a lot of people were a bit confused by the ending. I know it made a lot of people question what had actually happened there and what it actually meant, and was it a good or a bad ending, and what is for the future of The Last of Us. But just so you're not completely lost here with the gameplay, if you haven't played this before, basically this is a sort of survivor team deathmatch. You've basically got to scavenge supplies, ammo and such for your guns, because you can see I've only got 6 rounds left in this assault rifle, and I don't think that's even enough to take somebody out. And you've got to work together. So as you'll see, there's a sort of 2-tier death system. So unless you actually burn somebody to death or you kill them with a shiv or something like that, people just get downed, and then you have to go over to them and revive them before the other people manage to execute them. So it works like that, but it does encourage a lot of teamwork. I know we are a little bit spread out at the moment because a lot of these guys didn't have too much of a clue, and to be honest, I'm not very good at PS3 multiplayers because obviously I don't use a controller other than for single player games most of the time on PS3, but I try my best with this, so you'll have to see how I do. But the ending of The Last of Us, and this is just my interpretation, as I said for my top 15 upcoming games, it's good that other people have different opinions on what the ending is, and in fact they're top 15 games as well. So if you disagree, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is just my take on things. I guess I ought to begin by running through the story as a whole. Obviously, this contains spoilers. Somebody wrote on my walkthrough that it contains spoilers. I think that's the whole point of a walkthrough, but this will tell you spoilers, so if you haven't played the single player game, then I wouldn't listen to this. But the story, how everything ties together. So of course Joel's daughter Sarah dies within the first 15 minutes of the game, and Joel becomes a survivor past that point, or he learns to become a survivor. Now, a survivor, a lot of people class something as either being a good guy or a bad guy, and to be honest, Joel is not really either of those two. He's kind of forced by his environment to take a course of action that lets him survive, and as Tess said, they are shitty people, and the reason is they had to do some things to survive, which, let's face it, were not things which they probably would have wanted to do in any other kind of situation. And that actually brings an interesting parallel to the Hunters and David the Cannibal, those guys, because in the end they were kind of like Joel. I know they were made out to be the bad guys in the story, but they were, David had to eat humans essentially, or him and his other guys would not have survived the winter. So, these guys are basically survivors as well, and that's kind of the world that they're shaped in. So it isn't really moral choices that dictate things, it's really what allows that person or individual to continue existing. And that's the kind of thing which Joel is faced with. Now initially, Joel and Ellie don't really have much of a relationship, if any at all. They sort of treat each other with contempt. Joel obviously treats her as just cargo, and he needs to deliver her in order to continue to survive in the world. This all changes though after Joel saves Ellie from David, although she did manage to almost hack her way out of there. And when Ellie saves Joel, when he falls off the barrier and gets stabbed through his side, and they sort of develop a bond between themselves at that point, where survival for both of them goes beyond just their individual selves. And it's at that point, and just slightly before that at the ranch, that Joel starts to see Ellie as a replacement for Sarah. You'll notice when they're coming into Salt Lake City, Joel has stopped sort of living just in the present. Like up to that point, he'd completely refused to go back over all the things that he'd done in the past, and he starts thinking about the things which he's going to do in the future, like teach Ellie guitar. And it's that shift that just shows that this bond's now properly formed between the two of them. Now, it's not exactly the same bond from one to another, because Joel sort of has a kind of stronger one, whereas Ellie isn't really looking at what's going to happen in the future between them, although she doesn't want to feel alone, because she doesn't really sound that interested in, playing the guitar and all that kind of things, and she almost seems lost in her own thoughts about what's going to happen when she meets the Fireflies. This difference in this relationship bond between them, which is of course very important for the way the ending plays out, is also shown by the fact that Joel isn't really interested anymore just after the drafts whether or not they actually get to the Fireflies. He just wants to survive on with Ellie, whereas Ellie is the one who actually makes the decision that she's the one who wants to be the cure for mankind if that's what's required of her. What is important to see is just how dependent Joel is now on Ellie, and he essentially can't go on and survive without having Ellie there with him, and that is why he lies to Ellie, and I'll explain what he lies about in just a second, because people are unsure whether or not he did lie to her. But he can't go on and survive if he loses another daughter, so he essentially has no choice. He tells Ellie in the car, after he shot Marlene, that they had multiple people like her. Now that may or may not be the case. From the surgeon's log, it says that she was different to the rest that they had, but it doesn't specifically say infected as in the general infected. So there may have been some with some immunity, but Ellie was certainly something special to the Fireflies. He also tells Ellie that the Fireflies have actually stopped looking for a cure. Now, this is not the truth at all. He's shot Marlene, and he's killed the surgeon, which may mean for a while they've started looking for the cure, but it doesn't mean the Fireflies as a whole, just because those two people have died, are going to stop for a cure. The whole point of the Fireflies, and the reason why they split off from the rest of the city and why they're exiled, was because they felt that there was a cure to be searched for. So the likelihood of them giving all of that away for nothing is pretty much non-existent. They are still continuing searching for a cure. That's essentially what the Fireflies were doing. Now, of course, in terms of the future of Joel and Ellie and DLCs, that actually has a big impact, because they've gone back to Jackson County, where Tommy was at the Hydro Dam at the end there, and Tommy was a Firefly, and it's very likely that he and the guys there at the Hydro Dam are going to hear about the Fireflies being after Ellie and Joel, and it's going to be interesting not only to see where Tommy's loyalty lies, but also the impact of that decision, because even if you do treat it as a mistruth, Joel didn't tell Ellie what she needed to hear at that time, so she needed to hear that the exact truth from Joel, and he was the one person in all of this where she's just trusted and trusted and trusted, and that's why she just accepts it implicitly at the end, and it would really ruin her if she found out that this one person she did have faith in has now gone and lied to her. And you see, that's what makes the ending so complicated, because throughout the entire story you are playing against Joel and you want him to be the good guy in it, and Joel is neither a good guy or a bad guy. He just does what is required to survive, and as they're stood there at the end, as you can see when he touches his watch and when he picks her up off their surgeon's bed and he calls a baby girl, which he used to call Sarah, his survival, the reason for him surviving, is now to treat and look after her as if she were his replacement daughter. Whereas Ellie doesn't have that kind of father-daughter relationship as much inset in their relationship with Joel. She is more interested in being the cure, and Joel knows that if he didn't lie to her, she would freely sacrifice herself in order to save mankind. You see, it's very hard as somebody playing The Last of Us to sort of comprehend their situation, because we don't operate in this world as survivors. So we don't know what we would do in that situation. It really makes applying morals completely useless to it, and that's why the ending's confusing, because you could ask, should the Fireflies have told Ellie what was going to happen to her? I mean, she clearly didn't know afterwards that she was sacrificing herself by being on that table in order to get a vaccine, and would the vaccine have worked? I mean, what were the chances of that? In the end, it's that's a choice which it should really have been up to Ellie, as she was the one sacrificing herself. And if they had managed to get a vaccine, would the Fireflies have been able to distribute it to people? Would they have used it for some sort of political end? And should Joel have given up his whole world You know, so that the Fireflies can fix mankind. That's a huge ask when you've been surviving for so long, and you've got this one chance of getting back the thing which you originally lived for. But anyway, I hope this video was some food for thought for you guys, but thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next chapter.